I definitely want to start with, this is an unusual film because this was, I think, the first movie online that people were reporting like every little detail of the casting process. Whoever was going in to meet for the part, I don't know if you were aware of all that, but like there was like lists of all the actors reading. It was crazy how the minutia of this movie. Were you aware of this as you were going through the process of casting?
No, I wasn't aware of any of that, the idea of lists. And then I did have a friend who called me and went, "Are you going to read for Captain America?" I was, "How do you know that?" Because it's all over the internet. And so I then purposefully absolutely did not, because I didn't want to have to walk into the audition process with that in the back of my head, because I think that would have just been an unnecessary pressure that I didn't want to take in with me. So I just kind of ignored it all.
Now, jumping into when you guys were filming, this is another film that paparazzi were all over. There was little shots getting out. Were you all of a sudden starting to realize that in the casting process, and I'm sure you knew, big movie, but then all of a sudden there's a lot of interest while it's being filmed. Was that your sort of first moment where you realized, shit, this is going to be a really, really big movie?
Yeah, there were a couple of moments that it could potentially be a good movie. I never had an expectation of it. I just kind of wanted to prepare for the possibility of anything happening, really. But yeah, I was kind of really left alone, thankfully. So it was Chris that was having to, all the glimpses of the shield. That was the one thing that people seemed to want to get pictures of more than anything else. All the costumes. So everyone was having to kind of walk around in big duffel coats and hide everything. And I think the level of secrecy on it compared to the scripts and how many contracts I had to sign about confidentiality and what I couldn't say, that made me think about the scale of it more than anything and how protected it is because of how loved the franchise is, and Marvel sets out to want to be as respectful to the stories as possible and wants to release things within their own control before it escapes.
Something that really impressed me about this film is the romance between the two of you. I think it's done incredibly well. And I really, very powerful character, not, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of really good shit in this movie, to be, like, if I'm allowed to curse. Can you talk a little bit about, was that one of the things that really excited you? And did you know, I mean, obviously you never know how it's going to finally turn out when the film is done.
Yeah.
But did you sort of get a sense on set, like, wow, this could be a really good romance?
I love that Joe, at the very early onset, he wants these actors and this romance to be rooted in something real. He wants it to be concrete, so it's three-dimensional, so the audience relate to these people as opposed to a caricature or something kind of 2D. And I responded really well to that because I can't imagine not wanting to invest something grounded and real into any of the characters I play. Otherwise, I just don't think I'd really be in it. So I was relieved at that, and or not so much relieved, but it was just nice that he wanted me to bring that to it. And as we went on, I love the innocence of it. There's a lot of this. Hopefully, there's chemistry in them, in the playing of them, because they're kindred spirits in a way. And she thinks she's endeared to the early skinny Steve. There's something in him that she responds to, and it becomes very fond of. And I just like that there wasn't the kind of any gratuitous or token sex scene. I don't think there's so much that could be left up to our imagination of what could have happened had they been able to have time together, and that makes it more romantic and more kind of old-fashioned as well, more of the time.
What's interesting, there's a lot that can still be done with your character. For example, Joe was saying downstairs that I believe your character could be 88 in the modern times. So I guess the real question is, have you done costume tests of what you look like as 88?
No, I haven't, not yet. I would love to. I think the idea is fantastic and also bittersweet as well. Can you imagine, meeting your first love 70 years later and you haven't aged and they have? I just think it's...
Well, I mean, not to interrupt you, but I think this is obviously something major that needs to be played in the sequel, because they're already writing the sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, this obviously... It's just interesting because they're doing Avengers and he's there already, but will they save it for the Avengers or?
Yeah. Well, I haven't been privy to those conversations yet, so I don't know. I know that I'm contracted to be involved, as they see fit and as they would like, as and when. So I'm kind of hopefully I'll get a call. I don't know.
Well, they also said downstairs that there's gaps in the action scenes where you're watching something, then 4 months later you're watching something else, and they've talked about how a future sequel could in essence be a prequel where you're seeing more of the action back in the 40s. So that's another way of...
Oh, good. I'm liking this. I'm liking this kind of campaigning spirit that you have. I think you should be more vocal about it. Get it done.
I'm bringing this up with you right now just to
Good.
see if you've been told anything. Because obviously, this is one of those films, all their movies make like $400 and $500 million. They're all very successful. I think this one's going to be huge. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on going back to the 40s or playing her as an older...
Oh God, I'd love to. I think she's such a strong character and so kind of capable, and she's got a lot of skill, and there was a lot more action and stunts than I did that obviously ended up making up into the film because of time and speed and all that and story that we had to tell. So there's so much more that I would love to do and explore and challenge myself with machinery and stunts and beating people up. I loved it. I loved absolutely every aspect of the physical challenge of it, and I'd want to do it again.
You actually bring up to another thing I wanted to talk about, which is deleted scenes. Every movie has them. Were there a lot of scenes with your character that didn't make it, or just like a few little bits here and there?
There was a little bit which I thought would have been lovely, but which I think in terms of pace of the Kruger chase, the beginning kind of when he runs after them, there's a moment where when he pushes her out the way and she falls on the ground and she says, "I had him," and then he runs off. In between that running sequence, you see her hail a car. The car stops right in front of her before it hits her, and she grabs the man, and the car then starts to still move off, and she grabs the man from the moving car, throws him out of the car, gets in and drives off, and it was so slick and cool. But they had to cut it, which is a real shame. So it's somewhere we can use it for the sequels.
I was going to say, they have these things called DVDs and Blu-rays now, where they often do deleted scenes.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be on there. I hope. Yeah.
Now let's definitely talk a little bit about the costumes. You are wearing essentially the army garb for 99% of the movie. I believe you have one scene you're allowed to dress not army garb. Was there a lot of thought about? Talk about the costumes, and did you have input in them, or was it sort of like, these are real good, I'm just going to leave it alone? Yeah,
we started off with something very, very different, and it was almost kind of futuristic or very sci-fi, and then decided actually to go the completely opposite, and Anna Shepherd came on board, and she had done brilliant work on Inglourious Bastards and Schindler's List, so she was very familiar with the time and had done it so well, and she wanted them to be incredibly real, practical outfits and uniforms that they would have worn, and that was great because she also just said, "Darling, we should have the fabulous red dress in the scene," and made this wonderful costume which wasn't in the script as a way of going, this is what you can envision Peggy being like if she was on a date with him. So it creates the kind of the romance, the fantasy a bit more for them both, and that was really nice. And I remember that scene that day of walking onto set in that dress, having been in uniform for 5 months, and it was silent, and I was so embarrassed. I was just like, but of course you can't slouch in a dress like that, otherwise you look like mutton dressed as lamb. And so I had to just kind of walk really slowly, and I was in high heels, so I had to walk very slowly. So it was just, you could have just heard a pin drop when I walked on, which was great because I guess it was the first test of whether or not that was going to work in the film, and it did.
Well, you got very lucky also, though, that the action sequences at the beginning, you're not in high heels.
Yes.
So a lot of actresses or actors, I don't know what the right pronunciation is, have to do action in high heels, which is crazy.
Well, I had a court shoe, so it was about 3 inches, I suppose, which is completely workable in. I don't think she really could have run that fast in them, but they wanted to make it look like it was real, that she could do those stunts in what she was wearing, and it still being appropriate to the time.
Well, I know this is a little bit generic, but I am curious, when you get the part, how much are you preparing based on what's in the comic books? Are you one of these people that does a lot of research, or are you finding what you need out of the script?
It depends project to project. This, for me, felt like it called more for what was in the script and get an idea visually of that time within the comic books, because it exists in a heightened world. So we're not making any kind of statements with it. It doesn't really have, I don't think, references politically or anything like that. So it felt like just to get a sense of the comic book and the Marvel world. So I understood what I was going into and what was expected of me, and I could get the tone of it right. And I looked at early Captain America to present Captain America, or much later, and saw the kind of the development of the artwork and how stunning they are as pieces of art in themselves. And then it was really what was in the script, but then also what happened on set. We changed lines. Joe came up with alternatives. I suggested things. Chris suggested things. So it was a collaborative feel. So it didn't feel too stuck or staunch. It felt that we were kind of contributing to something as we went along. And we had a freedom there, which was lovely. And Joe really responds well to when I would start to do different takes differently. So I'd do something like the pub scene I did maybe about 4 times in completely different ways. And he loved that, and he just wanted, he could have done that all day, I think, if he had enough money just to kind of sit back and just let us all play, which was great because it meant, we felt like we were doing a good job for him, and it made us trust him more.
All right, well, cut that now.
I'll say thank you so much for giving me your time.
Okay.
And I will leave the other questions on the sheet.
Yes.